up, guys? Jordan here, and I wanted to shoot a short little training series on how to communicate effectively. Now, in this specific video, we're going to be talking about communicating information to an audience, whether this be during an announcement segment or maybe you're giving a message. This could be in a kid's service or a youth service or an adult service. It doesn't really matter what the context is, but in some way, shape, or form, there comes a time where we have important information that we need to get across to an audience. And when that time comes, communication is the vehicle in which we get that information across to people. And so it's important that we work hard to be great communicators, not just good communicators, not just communicators that say the information, but communicators that are intentional about doing an excellent job of taking this vitally important information and making sure we are equipping people with it to the best of our abilities. That's what this video series is going to be about. Today, we're going to look at 4 things you need to know to communicate effectively. Let's get started. Four things that lead to effective communication. And I use that wording really intentionally. 4 things that lead to effective communication. And that word lead to effective communication means you need to think about these 4 things before you're communicating. These 4 things are not going to help you 10 minutes into your message. They're not going to help you if you start thinking about them in the middle of your announcement segment or your teaching segment in a classroom. You need to think about these things and know these things before you start whatever platform you're communicating on. So let's get started. These are 4 things you need to know, and I'm going to jump in with number 1 right now. Number 1 is this. You need to know your stuff. If you're going to communicate effectively, you need to know your stuff. And here's what I mean about stuff. Stuff encapsulates a couple things. First, it means know the material, know the information. What do I need to say? If you are speaking in an announcement segment and you are communicating some announcements or some information to the people, you need to know the details of the announcement. Is it an event? What's it called? Where is it at? What time? What's the date? How do you sign up? You just show up, or do you have to sign up? Do you have to register? Is there a cost? Know the information. And you need to know this before you do the announcement, because if you don't, what's going to happen is you're going to stand up on the stage and you are going to be thinking about, okay, what was that again? Was it at this time? Hey, does anybody in here know what time the announcement or what time this event is? You don't want to do that. That's embarrassing. Number 2, it creates fog. It creates confusion. You need to know your stuff. So know what you need to say. If you're speaking a message, know what you need to say. Know what you need to say. You might know the one thing of your message, the goal of your message, but it's really important for you to know all of the things you're wanting to communicate through your message. And the other thing that know your stuff, that word stuff that it encapsulates is how you're going to say it. See, this is just as important. You can know the information, but if you don't figure out beforehand how you're going to communicate the information, you can get into some sticky situations. I have a tendency, if I don't practice what I'm going to say before I say it, I normally say something stupid. Here's the thing. If we don't know our stuff before we get on stage or we show up to the moment that we need to communicate in, oftentimes we're going to do one of 2 things. We're either going to communicate way too much. We're going to say way too many things. We might re-communicate something and over-communicate something so much that we kind of talk circles around it. We might, like I just mentioned about myself, we might say something stupid. We might say something we didn't need to say that is actually counterproductive to the information we're trying to get across. You need to know your stuff. Sometimes if we don't know our stuff, we'll say too little. Sometimes we'll go up there and we'll miss information. We will say things that kind of get the point across, but we'll miss, very, very important details. So listen, if you want to communicate effectively, you need to know your stuff. Know what you need to say. What is the information? And how are you going to communicate that information? How are you going to say it? That's the first thing. Know your stuff. All right, second thing is this. Know the goal. So number one was know your stuff. And number two is know the goal. What do I mean by goal? Well, you need to know why the information is important in the first place and what you want people to do with the information. Why is this information important? Why is this event you're announcing or this special thing you're talking about in your announcement segment so important that other people need to know about it? You need to understand why it's important, what the importance of the announcement is. If you're speaking a message, why is this concept you're talking about important? Why does it matter? Why does this truth from Scripture mean so much to you that you need to share it? You need to know the goal. You need to know why what you're communicating is important. And the second part of knowing the goal is knowing what you want people to do with that information. Because this is important, you need to do this. Because this event is such a big deal and it's going to be such a blessing to you, you need to sign up for it today. Here's how you do that. You need to register for this event. You need to scan this QR code. You need to know why it's important and exactly what are you wanting people to do with the information you're sharing. If you're speaking a message, it's the same thing. I would argue that if you speak an entire message, you could have phenomenal information, really important information, but if you don't give people something to do with that information, you may have just wasted your time. Because information in and of itself is not unique in this world. There is so much information going in my mind and out of my mind on a daily basis, including the times where I'm communicating or I'm being communicated to. So how we break that up is we take the information from just being noise and just being information, and we put it in people's hands. So if you're preaching a message, how are people actually going to take what you're talking about and do something with it? What does this truth, this really important information mean to you? And what are you going to do about this today? We have to know the goal of what we're communicating. And when we do, we'll communicate way more effectively. Not just because we know why it's important and we're giving people something to do. I believe that when we know the goal, we will communicate like we care because we understand the importance. We understand the impact this could have on somebody's life if they take this step that we're talking about taking. You're going to communicate like you care if you know the goal. And when we care, we're going to be more effective at things. So that's the first thing is know your stuff, know what you need to say and how you're going to say it. Number two is know the goal. Why is this information important and what do I want people to do with it? All right, guys, number three, know the moment you're communicating in. What do I mean by this? Know the mood of the room and what that's going to be when you come up to communicate beforehand. Again, this is all beforehand. You need to know what's kind of the situation going to be that I'm walking into. Is it going to be a high energy moment? Is it going to be a lower energy moment, more of an intimate moment? And then also, you need to know what that desired energy level is for the segment you're communicating. Are we wanting people to have fun with this? Or is this more of a serious thing that we want to get across and kind of have a reverence about what we're talking about? You need to know the moment you're communicating in, the mood of the room at the time you arrive, and also the desired energy level for the segment you're communicating. This is really helpful. At the Vine, we have worship, 3 songs normally, and towards the end of worship, we normally try to bring it to a more intimate place. We'll slow things down a little bit and give people space to pray or hear from the Lord or just have time with Jesus at, again, a little bit of a slower pace. That means that the segment that comes directly after this, normally there's not a video bumper in between these two things. And so the person doing announcement/giving normally has the role of transitioning from the intimate to the energetic. And so knowing that ahead of time is helpful, because if I know I've got an announcement, we're going to be, jumping in bounce houses at Greg's house this Saturday, that's probably not something I should lead off with, knowing I'm coming into a intimate moment. So if I know that, I can plan ahead. Okay, I need to say something to transition us from this intimate moment we're in, but also bring people with me so that we can be excited about this. If you've got a video bumper in between, this is good to know as well, because if you got a video bumper, you can come out and you can kind of set the tone of energy right away. But again, if people are here and you've got to bring them with you to this new energy level or to this new mood that we want to set in the room, it's really, really important to know that ahead of time. So know the moment you are communicating in. I want to give you a tip. If you are going to be communicating on the stage, doesn't matter if it's in a kids class, for youth, or for the weekend, just ask a question. Say, hey, what's the desired energy level for our announcement segment this weekend? And where am I coming up? Am I coming up after worship? Is there a video before me? Ask these questions beforehand so that you can know the moment you're communicating in. I promise you it's going to help you prepare better, and you're going to walk up a lot more naturally and feel like you're in place when you kind of understand the moment the room is in. So that's number 3. Let's move on. All right, last thing, number 4, know your audience. Know your audience. No better example of this than just looking at the Bible. When you look at the Bible, you have all these different books of the Bible, all of them written to a different desired audience. The New Testament especially, you see the Gospels, who are all written to different groups of people, but you also see the letters written from Paul and the other apostles who are writing to churches in specific areas. And I'm telling you, my goodness, when you look at the audience that these books were written to, what, the circumstances of their day, the, kind of the phase of life these people were in, the phase of history these people were in, the Gospels and the letters make so much more sense. The information is so much clearer when you know the audience. And it's the same thing with verbal face-to-face communication. If I know my audience, I'm going to communicate better. There are words that Paul chose in his letter to the Corinthians that were very intentional because they were Corinthians and they would have understood this. They would have got this. And it's the same thing with us. You need to know your audience. You need to think about a couple different things. Number 1, age is important. If you're speaking in a kid's classroom or in a kid's environment at all, you need to take that into account. You cannot communicate to children like you communicate to adults. You can give them the same information. Children are not in a lower level of understanding than adults in many ways when it comes to spiritual things. In some ways, I think they're actually more receptive. So you can give them the same level of information, but you have to communicate in a different way. They receive information differently. They look for information differently. Teenagers are the same way. I got to communicate completely different to a teenager than I communicate to a kid, and especially different than I communicate to an adult. So what's the age range? Am I communicating to kids? Am I communicating to teenagers? Am I communicating to adults? Know your audience. Another part of this, though, too, especially when you're in a room with a lot of different demographics of people, know the phase of life of the majority. Know the circumstances of the majority. This is so helpful. It's so helpful to know, okay, we have a high level of young married families at our church, and they're probably going to be here this Sunday. Or we have a high level of grandparents and kind of elderly. We have a high level of middle-aged people. Or, hey, what's the social, economic status of the majority in our room? It's really important to know your audience. And you don't have to scrutinize every detail of your talk or your announcement segment around these things, but it gives you a sensitivity towards the people you're talking to, and at the minimal level, what this affects is it at least gives you a care for them because you're looking into this. Oh, this is who I'm talking to. So now I have a respect for who I'm talking to as I bring this information forward. Know your audience before you get up to communicate. Well, I hope these 4 things were really helpful to you. I know they have been for me. Listen, effective communication is important. If the information we are communicating is important enough to communicate, then the way we communicate is really, really important. It's important to take that into consideration. So I'm sure these 4 things are going to be a benefit to you. I want to do a quick recap really quick. Number 1, know your stuff. Know what you need to say and know how you're going to say it before you got to say it to your audience. Number 2, know the goal. Why is this information so important, and what do I want people to do with the information? Number 3, know the moment you're communicating in. What is the mood of the room that I'm walking into, and what is the desired energy level that I need to bring people to during my time communicating? And number 4 is this: know your audience. Think about the age range of people I'm talking to, the life circumstance of the majority, the phase of life of the majority. This is going to help you plan and prep your words to have the most impact. These things are massively important to take into consideration before you communicate. So I want to encourage you, if you're communicating soon, whether it's during announcements, speaking a message, teaching a class, look at these big 4 things and take them into consideration. And I have a feeling you're going to feel a lot more confident in your communication leading up to this next time that you share.